Boo!
I can go ahead and go. Okay, so this did not happen on the 4th of July, but it's about fireworks. So this obviously relates to it. And I had never heard of this, so I'm excited to share this. This happened on, let's see here, it was May 27th, 1983. It's the Benton Fireworks Disaster, Benton, Tennessee. Have you heard of this?
I don't think so.
So what I did was I found a local news station that had a clip about it. So keep in mind, this clip I'm about to share is actually from 1983. Then we'll go into the story after this. We're going to break it down in two parts. First part won't be quite as long, but we'll set the stage for the longer second part. Let's go ahead and start off with the news clip that covered the disaster.
Later learned it happened in an illegal fireworks operation. Here's our coverage from 1983.
News 12's Thursday Throwback, sponsored by Kubota of Chattanooga.
The victims were inside this secret fireworks factory this morning when the facility blew up shortly after 9 o'clock. The explosion leveled the structure and could be felt up to 15 miles away.
I was walking through the jail and I heard a loud explosion. Walked to the back door of the jail and I could see a white puff of smoke coming from this area. I got in my patrol car and proceeded out here to the scene. I was one of the first ones here on the scene.
Polk County Sheriff officials say they had received information that fireworks were being manufactured in the area, but they didn't know where. Following this morning's blast, they now believe that the 5-year-old Webb's Bait Farm was just a front for the M80 operation. The blast also damaged several cars, the Webb's home, a storage trailer, and shattered the windows of a neighbor's house.
I never had nothing as loud and go as bad as it went. And it seemed like the whole house was crumbling up. It just seemed like I could feel it, and I thought it was an earthquake.
Officials at the scene say the secret manufacturing facility appeared to have been a lucrative operation. In addition to the firecrackers, with the strength of a third of a stick of dynamite each, officials found drums of volatile dry chemicals at the scene, more volatile than is necessary to make simple firecrackers. The owner of the plant, Dan Webb, has not been located. He's believed to be somewhere in New York City today. 3 of his relatives are thought to be among the dead. But Webb's aunt, Patsy Kennedy, arrived at the scene late this afternoon.
He sells worms and delivers them. That's what he does. He's on the road doing that.
Were you surprised to find that they were making explosives?
Oh, shocked, I tell you.
Boy, what a powerful story. Dan Webb was delivering M80s in Illinois when that deadly explosion happened.
This information I'm about to share to you was from episode 23 called the Benton Fireworks Disaster, Organized Crime. I will have the article in the show notes. If I mess up any of these names and you're from there, I'm sorry. I'm going to try my best. I don't want to butcher any names and offend anybody that was a part of it or involved in this area. So I'm going to go ahead of time and apologize, and I'll get into this story here. Again, this is the Benton, Tennessee fireworks disaster. We just watched the intro that we played. It was a news coverage from this in 1983. They covered it live on the scene. It looked like it was the day of or the day after, I would assume it. There was bodies laying around, I believe, covered up by bags, different things that we just saw. So obviously that was right when it happened. We'll go into this article here, though. No one in the community suspected the unassuming worm farmers at Webb's Bait Farm were hiding a sinister secret. Polk County is located in the southern corner of the USA state of Tennessee. As of the 2020 United States Census, population was 17,544. The county seat is in Benton. The county was created and founded on November 28, 1839 from parts of Bradley and McMinn counties after final removal of most of the Cherokee out of that region. The county was named after the then governor, future president, James K. Polk. The Benton County population was 1,532 at the 2020 census. So, Webb's Bait Farm, located along Welcome Valley Road near Interstate with Reynolds Bridge Road and Pankey Lane in rural Polk County, about 2 miles south of Benton. A large sign at the edge of the road identified the property as Webb's Bait Farm, offering redworms and fishing tackle for sale, owned by a man named Dan Lee Webb. Webb looked like a garden variety earthworm farmer. They had been in business since 1978. They also owned a masonry business and faced a large cutback with high interest rates, reduced work available. However, Webb obviously decided that he needed more income Dan Webb's relative David Parks and Howard Emmett Barnblett of nearby Osh began manufacturing M80 and M100 fireworks, which are banned by federal laws, in an old metal dairy barn on the farm. Barnblett, who owned a fireworks store in Benton and was an acquaintance of Webb, suggested that Webb begin operation to combat financial problems. He reportedly taught Webb and Parks how to manufacture these fireworks, and then connected them with suppliers of materials and distributors in multiple states. John Franklin Miller of Holland, Ohio, also helped line up buyers and split the fee with Barnblett. This is a quote here. "I had to figure out a way to make more money to pay bills," he said. "Time went along and things got desperate, so I started to talk to Howard more seriously about us making M80s. Webb converted a building on his farm to a factory and hired friends and relatives to work there for $5 an hour. This happened in late September 1982, and this article quotes it as equivalent to $14 an hour now. He paid them cash at the end of each day. Each firework case, which contained 1,440 individual fireworks, was sold for $160. That's equivalent to $435 today. With Barnblett, who was responsible for selling the fireworks, and John Franklin Miller, an Ohio fireworks manufacturer who was the primary supplier of materials, was responsible for soliciting customers. The two-story 40 by 70 barn that housed the factory consisted of chemical mixing room on the first floor and an assembly room on the second floor. The building was tucked in a little wooden hillside on the farm. Most employees were not aware of the dangers involved and were not educated in safe working conditions, even though they were mixing explosives by hand. Between December 1982 and the date of the explosion, a total of 1,542,880 M-Series fireworks were reported to be manufactured at that factory and distributed to at least 12 states. The factory was determined to have accumulated a profit of about $1.2 million. Again, a few years ago, it's equivalent to about $3 million during its operation. At its peak, the factory ran a minimum of 6 days a week, employed between 12 to 14 people, and produced between 100 and 130 cases of fireworks a week. In the months leading up to the blast, the Polk County Sheriff's Office, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, TBI, and Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, had received word of an illegal fireworks manufacturing operation in the area, but were uncertain of the location. Reports say that the small explosions could be heard coming from the Webb's property by neighbors in the months leading up to the explosion. On May 1983, at approximately 9:15 a.m., 11 workers were on duty when a cache of M80 and M100 explosives, flash powder, and other chemicals in the barn detonated, producing a powerful explosion and instantly killing all 11 workers and leveling the barn. The initial blast was followed over the next several minutes by several smaller blasts, which witnesses described as sounding like shotguns, believed to have been from individual firework cases which were not detonated initially but then later were. The blast also threw debris as far as 200 yards from the site and produced a shock wave that leveled trees as far as 100 yards away. Several witnesses claimed to have seen a white mushroom cloud which was estimated to be 600 to 800 feet tall, and the blast was heard and felt in Cleveland, which is 20 miles away. The force of the blast shattered windows in several homes and other structures on nearby properties, which reportedly resulted in some neighbors receiving minor cut wounds. Parts of the bodies were hurled through the roofs of nearby houses and carport as far as 500 feet from the site. To one side of the barn, several dozen grave-sized enclosures stood knee-high off the ground. The rectangular beds that produced the operation's legal product, fishing worms, a stone's throw from one end to the other barn's foundation. A white house still stood. A long, skinny building that had been cobbled together over time. It suggested at least 3 additions to the tiny original structure. A door to a Toyota Corolla parked near the barn had also sustained some damage but largely survived. Its windows and rear windshield had shattered, and the right front quarter panel was gone. So were all 4 hubcaps, exposing shiny hubs underneath. The trunk lid had been bent upward a couple of inches, and the car's side bore countless scrapes from flying debris. The skin of the passenger side door, which was facing the barn, had absorbed enough of the blast to flex inward. 6 of the dead were decapitated by force of the blast. Dan's cousin, Tommy Webb, survived only because he was mowing grass outside of the factory. The explosion was also so hard it threw him to the other side of the house. When first responders arrived, he was walking around the yard, dazed, shocked, and badly burned. He is the only one who lived through the explosion. Webb's wife, Linda Sue, who was in the house at the time, fled before the deputies arrived. Crews from the ATF and TBI arrived to investigate the cause of the explosion. A Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, TEMA crew, which concluded forensic specialist William M. Bass of the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, later arrived on the scene to identify the victims. They brought Dr. Bass, Dr. Bass from the Knoxville Body Farm, to help identify bodies, which this was really new crime scene technology, and it was written about in several publications up to this date. One big worry of the ATF agents was the potential danger from unexploded ordnance, fireworks that had escaped the initial blast, and indeed a mobile home parked near the wreckage of the barn, one side of it peeled open like a sardine can's lid, was jammed with enough firecrackers and bottle rockets and Roman candles to shred the trailer and anybody near it. Luckily, the explosions had consumed the oxygen around the barn, so the blast itself had snuffed out the sparks and embers that might have yet set off a stockpile of fireworks later. Just to be on the safe side, though, the ATF agents oversaw the bulldozing and burial of the trailer's contents beneath several feet of red clay. We'll go into a little bit more here on part 2, but man, this was a crazy thing. So a significant blast, 11 people dead, all because of financial hardship, and got into this $1 million+ operation of creating illegal fireworks, Luke.
You wouldn't think that there was that much money in making illegal M80s. You know, like, you wouldn't think there are that many people trying to buy them. That's crazy how many they were producing a week.
Viv says that's insane. The explosion was so strong it destroyed the oxygen around the area. We just saw the news footage. Looked like a tornado hit the damn area.
Yeah.
Like a bomb. I guess it was a bomb, right?
You know, that blast, they said they felt it in Cleveland, right? 20 miles away.
Yeah. I don't know if that's Cleveland, Tennessee, I assume. Whatever it was 15 to 20 miles away. They could feel the blast.
I think it was funny about that. It reminded me of this, like, armory that blew up during World War I. They said that was the largest recorded blast on the planet at the time. And so it just reminded me of that story. They were mixing up basically just dynamite. Just
by hand. Said by hand.
In smaller packages, but it was basically dynamite. He's just saying, what did they say, like 1,000 cases a week? Or 500 cases a week?
I have to go back and look, but it was a lot.
Like, when you said it, was like, this is insane. This is like a major operation.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, it's at this point, it was over $1 million in profits.
That's crazy.
Obviously, the facility they just converted a dairy barn, as it quoted it, was not meant for what they were doing. People obviously were not educated. Shouldn't have been doing that. That's insane.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this story before. This is really interesting.
It is. I was trying to get through it there. Hopefully I did a decent job reading it.
I would say there were some misprinted words there.
Yeah. I had to restart, but that's all good.
Yeah.
Part of it a live experience if you're here. But yeah, this one, when I first started reading about it, I was like, this is absolutely crazy. So imagine being this guy, what was his name? Dan Webb? Apparently delivering fireworks in New York when this happened. So it was the news report that we just watched said he hadn't been located yet. He was actually out of state selling the stuff that they were making.
Jeez Louise. That's crazy.
And part 2 gets even more interesting because they bring in this well-known Dr. Bass, who is a very interesting guy. I'm excited to share his report with you. It's very gruesome and terrible, though, just to give you a heads up. But his specialty is basically identifying dead bodies. About impossible to identify. So part 2 goes into his report on that. So
that's crazy.
Which this is, I think the report part is where it really gets scary, because right now it's just like the build up to it. 11 people are dead, massive explosion. The part 2 gets into the details of how bad the explosion was. And that's what makes it scary to me.
I'm looking forward to that.
What if you're living next door to somebody doing this?
I mean, you never know.
The cops knew something was going on in the area, right? But
yeah,
couldn't identify where. It was really, they said it was like tucked away in a holler, and
yeah, it says up in like a wooded area.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, I just keep going back to it. It sounds like it's made up, right? Like someone has an illegal firework factory in their farm. That's crazy. That like nowadays, you know, if someone said there was like an illegal drug factory or something, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But a firework factory making that much money.
Well, I know you love fireworks, so that's why I was excited to share this.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You don't look in that much, though, do you?
I wouldn't even do it for myself.
You know a lot more about fireworks. Talk to me about these M80 and M100s before we go to your story.
Well, I know they were outlawed, I think, in the 60s. So it's been by this point, it had even been like a while. But yeah, they used to be sold, and they were a quarter or a third stick of dynamite, depending on the manufacturer. And also, I think M80 was slightly less than the M100. So I think M80 is technically a quarter stick.
This thing's powerful?
Yeah, it will kill you.
One could really kill you, you're saying?
Yeah. You can still, in a weird way, get them because, so you make a stump removal explosive, and it's technically an M80 from what I've heard, but it's only sold Tractor Supply things, and actually I don't even know if they're still for sale, but I know for a long while they were.
Are they still banned?
Oh yeah, they'll sell something labeled M80 or maybe even labeled M800s to get around the naming. But usually what it is just a bunch of regular firecrackers wrapped in a wrapper that all explode pretty quickly, but not at the exact same time. They are considerably less powerful than an M80 really was. They also used to be called cherry bombs.
Yeah. Put them in mailboxes and stuff, kids would.
The real cherry bombs and M80s, they've been outlawed for a real long time, but they have come up with ways to make it seem like it's almost that powerful still. But it's not. And I've seen videos because there are other countries where you can buy M80s still.
And this is a factory full of them.
Thousands upon thousands of them.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?